Hello everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be a non-spoiler review of Army of the Dead. Released on May the 14th, 2021, it stars Dave Bautista, Ella Purnell, Hiroyuki Sanada, Theo Rossi, Amara Hardwick, and it was directed by Zack Snyder. It was released in cinemas on May the 14th before going to Netflix a week later, and this is a release strategy I never understand. You know, we've had this controversial debate about movies going on to streaming and cinemas at the same time, but I don't understand the weekly period in between. It doesn't really give the film much of a chance to be successful theatrically overall, but hey, that's how they wanted to do it. So the story overall of Army of the Dead is that we have a US convoy transporting a special container, and it gets crashed into by a car, and then the container gets exposed, unleashing a lethal zombie that attacks the soldiers. And this is essentially the beginning of a zombie outbreak within Las Vegas, and this is outlined in a typically showy credit sequence of Zack Snyder, very similar to what we saw in the opening credits of The Watchmen. Las Vegas is now a quarantined area, with the government planning to evacuate people before destroying it with nukes. Former mercenary Dave Bautista, who with a team helped rescue people during the beginning of the outbreak, is now working in the diner, and all of a sudden he gets the dangerous offer of a lifetime when businessman Hiroyuki Sanada tells of a safe that is located within a quarantine zone containing $200 million. All Dave Bautista has to do is to recruit a team who's desperate enough to infiltrate the quarantine zone and collect the money within the safe, which is contained within a Las Vegas casino. The team face a race against time in order to apprehend the money, getting past the zombies before the government decides to obliterate Las Vegas with an airstrike. Now I have to say, overall this was a very fun, action-packed, if slightly overlong action adventure. There are moments of intensity, jeopardy and peril throughout the movie, enough there to keep you interested without the 2.5 hours running time. Now in the ideal world, this really should have been a brisk 90 to 100 minute long adventure with a real zip and pace about it, but of course this is typically Zack Snyder, and he unfortunately showcases so many of the traits that frustrates a lot of critics. This is more in the beginning half of the movie, where once again he constantly uses slow motion in certain sequences where we learn how the team are being assembled together, where we see them recruiting certain members, and we get these montage sequences on how they're going to carry out exactly their plan. And this isn't a terrible element by any means, but it just adds a lot of unneeded bloat to the movie. We kind of get that repetitive structure, right? We're going to do this stage, then we're going to do that stage, what we see a lot within Guy Ritchie movies as well, and it's just unnecessary. Like I said, it just adds more to the running time. Zack Snyder also strangely uses this blurring effect where certain characters are out of focus in certain scenes. There are some that are clearly in focus and some that are out of focus. I don't really understand what he was trying to convey by using this visual tactic overall. It didn't really add anything to the overall cinematography of the movie and just provided a bit of a distraction. Now he tones this down in the later half of the movie, thank goodness, when we start to really get amongst the action and the carnage. But again, I don't know what the reason was behind this visual choice, and it becomes a bit annoying and a bit distraction in the earlier part of the movie. Now overall the action sequences are executed very well. They're far more coherent and staged in an exciting fashion. This is where he does tone down the slow motion shots, and the film is far more better off it. You know, he only uses slow motion sparingly, and that's how he should do it all the time, Zack Snyder. And as a result, the film is far more exciting in the second half. Now, I would say overall, as a zombie film, this is far more of a gritty actioner than a scary horror movie. There are many scenes of violent and very gory moments that are quite intense, but I didn't think it was overall that scary. And I think, again, Zack Snyder is very much more in action type mode, and not a lot of moments are built up. There's not a lot of suspense that is generated or tension that is built up throughout these sequences. It's again very much of that typical Netflix style of movie making where things just happen and everything is very rapid fire, and they try to go for this much more of this visual realistic approach, and you just want to see a bit more composure in really ramping up the suspense so it can really get you hooked on the edge of your seat overall. When we look at the makeup design of the zombies, some were very stylish. In particular, the lead characters within the zombies, essentially there are two species. There's one that are very disorganized, and then there's another group called the Alphas, which are far more smarter and quicker and mobile in their movements, and they are much more in controlling of the overall zombies. And a couple of the lead characters of the zombies are designed very well, but the other zombies come across as far more generic, and these zombies aren't quite as distinctive or as lethal as the ones that are presented in World War Z, which I think overall is a superior movie to Army of the Dead. I think visually overall it looked very fine. It's got that typical greyish aesthetic tone, so typical of Zack Snyder's work, but it's not distracting too much. You can clearly see everything that's going on. He does well to give enough of these wide spanning shots where we see the whole environment of the Las Vegas area really overtaken and stripped down. Again, it's got that typical dystopian look that he likes to transmit so much throughout his movies, but again, it wasn't a hindrance, I think, throughout the movie overall. I did feel there were too many characters. I think that, and that really got in the way, particularly again in the first half of the movie where we have to go through that whole process of recruiting members throughout the team. Nothing wrong with the actors in terms of their performances, but I definitely felt there was at least 2, maybe 3 characters that weren't necessary to the overall story. Now, when we go to the cast performances overall, in the standout lead, we have Dave Bautista, and I have to say, as the lead character Scott Ward, who leads the mercenary group, Dave Bautista performs very well in this. Obviously, we know him primarily for his role as Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's had more small minor roles, in particular the likes of Blade Runner 2049 as well. But I think this is the first real, very substantial role from Dave Bautista where we can see elements there of what I think can be potentially a very solid and reliable character actor. Obviously, he has the big physical presence, and that it's very helpful in the lead performance, and he looks very awesome in all of the shootout scenes and the fighting scenes. We have very rapid sequences. There's one in particular in the casino section of the movie where he's fighting off multiple zombies and shooting them and hitting them and punching and kicking them, and of course Batista looks very convincing in these scenes. But when we get to the other side of the character and he's handling certain elements of emotion and drama, he does very well. There's a certain tragedy and backstory within the character which I won't delve into too much, and Dave Bautista handles these elements with a certain amount of conviction, and I think there's a good potential here if he can stay on this trajectory and where we can get very much of a good solid character actor. You know, his relationship with his daughter Ella Purnell, again, he's struggling to find reconnection with her without not touching too much into what happens overall within the story, but I think he handles this dynamic with her very well. The other standout characters for me was Zora Alexander, I think I'm saying her name right, as Linny. She's a French woman who's already in the zone, and she's seen the previous horrors going on in terms of the zombies and when they've consumed other people, and she's that typical more of a female badass character, and she was very much of a distinctive personality throughout this movie as well. And as I said, other characters didn't perform badly, they just felt a bit disposable as the film went on overall. Ellen Purnell did fine as his daughter again, but when she was away from Bautista, she didn't really have much of a presence. I will say one thing that did annoy me, and this is so much of a cliche that we see typically through these zombie horror movies or series, is that once again we have characters doing stupid things, going off on their own when they should be sticking together in order to enhance people's safety. And again, it just robs some of the credibility away from the movie when you have characters just doing stupid things that ends up getting people killed. And again, you're just thinking from a logistic point of view, if certain characters just stayed in their position and didn't go off in this direction, it would help the overall team achieve their mission. That was something that was a bit annoying and a bit frustrating for me. It's really 2/3 of the way where we'll see certain characters doing idiotic things, and it just spoiled my overall enjoyment of the second half of the movie. So if I had to give an overall score for Army of the Dead, I would give it a 6.8 out of 10. Like I said, it's very well handled in terms of its action and its visual style. It looks great on the big screen overall. I like the use of music and editing to a certain degree, particularly in the second half, and that's when the film really picks up the pace and becomes much more of that fun, free-spirited action adventure that I think people were looking forward to when they first saw the initial trailers. But unfortunately, this film again suffers very much from the typical traits and habits of its director, Zack Snyder. He's clearly a visionary, but at the same time he does need to be reined in, very much similar to Tarantino, where if he had a much more of a sterner editor, then this would have been stripped down to at least, I think, 100 minutes, and it felt far more pacier and exciting and much more enjoyable, and I think it would have increased the rewatchability of this movie overall. So those are my thoughts and feelings and review on Army of the Dead. Let me know what you think in the comments below. How do you think it compared to Zack Snyder's previous work when we look at the likes of 300, Watchmen, and of course the DCEU entries? Do you think it's superior to those? Do you think it's inferior to those? Where do you think Zack Snyder now will go in the future? Do you want to see a further sequel and continuation of this Army of the Dead franchise? Without spoiling again too much, there is potential for it to go even further. I think it serves much more as a prequel to his Dawn of the Dead movie, if that's correct. Again, anybody relay that to me in the comments overall. But let me know what you think about this movie. I probably won't do a spoiler review because, to be honest, there probably isn't too much to spoil in terms of this movie. But if you do want me to delve much more into the details of the overall film, let me know in the comments below, and then I'll provide a spoiler review later on down the line as well. Please also hit those like and subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content and movie reviews like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.